William Blake was born on November 28, 1757, in London, England. He had 6 siblings, however, 2 of them died when they were babies. When he was a child, he talked about having visions which concerned his parents. Because of this, his parents did not send him to public school because he was very different from the other children. Instead, he was taught to read and write at home. William Blake originally wanted to be an artist, but he gave this up because art school was too expensive. Instead, he worked as an apprentice to a man who engraved gravestones. During this time, he discovered poetry. Blake helped draw a lot of tombstones, and this exposed him to a very Gothic style, which acted as an inspiration and influence on his poetry. In 1782, Blake married his wife Catherine Boucher. She was illiterate, so he taught her to read, write, and draw. She even printed and wrote some of his poetry. The 2 of them did not have any children together. In 1784, Blake and one of his friends set up a print shop. However, this failed, and Blake spent the rest of his life as an engraver and an illustrator of magazines. Blake also taught his younger brother how to paint, draw, and engrave. However, in 1787, his brother died from consumption during the winter. William believed he saw his brother's spirit leave his body. He continued to have visions of his brother throughout the rest of his life, and this inspired some of his works. One of William Blake's most famous works was Poetical Sketches. He created this first printed work in 1783. He also wrote Songs of Innocence in 1789 and Songs of Experience in 1794, both of which were a collection of poems. Blake was creative and went against the rules of his time period in his artwork and poetry. He would not compromise his art in order to become popular. Because of this, William Blake was very poor in the last few years of his life. He illustrated for Dante's Divine Comedy until he died on August 12, 1827. William Blake lived during the time of the Industrial Revolution. England was the first country to become industrialized, and William Blake lived in London. The Industrial Revolution occurred when the cities changed to factories and machine-based production. This provided a lot more jobs and more stable lifestyles from past rural farming techniques that many people had used prior to the Industrial Revolution. This also raised the standard of living. However, it caused the cities to become a lot more crowded and unsanitary. There were also many new inventions that were created, and this caused society to focus on new philosophical ideas. This is really displayed in Blake's poetry as he focuses on deep philosophical concepts. The Echoing Green. The sun does arise and make happy the skies. The merry bells ring to welcome the spring. The skylark and thrush, the birds of the bush, sing louder around to the bell's cheerful sound, while our sports shall be seen on the echoing green. Old John with white hair does laugh away care, sitting under the oak among the old folk. They laugh at our play, and soon they all say, such were the joys when we all, girls and boys, in our youth time were seen on the echoing green. Till the little ones, weary, no more can marry, the sun does descend, and our sports have an end. Round the laps of their mothers, many sisters and brothers, like birds in their nests, are ready for rest, and sport no more seen on the darkening green. This poem describes what it is like to play as a child. The world feels so safe, and your main priority is exploring and discovering. I interpret this poem as the author portraying the innocence you experience as a child. The children in this poem do not have concerns. They play all the time in a beautiful spot outside. In this poem, the children are still unaware of the dangers and evil that are in the world. This far into their lives, they have not yet experienced the darkness or loss of innocence that comes with growing up. Some critics who have analyzed this collection of poetry feel as though it was written to be a children's book because the poems are seen as playful and simple. I feel as though this collection of poems has a deeper meaning. While they may seem simple, the author is using these topics and this choice of words to emphasize the innocence of childhood. The deeper meaning of this collection is shown when it is compared with his other work, The Songs of Experience. These two collections contrast one another in a way that represents the loss of innocence. One of the main literary techniques used in this poem is the AABBCCDDEE rhyme scheme. This is used in each of the 3 stanzas. Imagery is also used in the poem to describe the setting and the feelings of the children. In the first stanza, Blake uses personification when describing the sun and the sky. The author also uses repetition to emphasize the line, "on the echoing green." Earth's answer. Earth raised up her head from the darkness dread and drear. Her light fled, stony, dread, and her locks covered with gray despair. Prisoned on watery shore, starry jealousy does keep my den, cold and hoar. Weeping o'er, I hear the father of the ancient men, selfish father of men, cruel, jealous, selfish fear, can delight, chained in night, the virgins of youth and morning bear. Does spring hide its joy when buds and blossoms grow? Does the sower sow by night or the plowman in darkness plow? Break this heavy chain that does freeze my bones around, selfish, vain, eternal bane, that free love with bondage bound. This poem describes the feeling of grief, despair, or any other deep negative emotion. This poem is describing the darkness of human nature. It explores the dark emotions that everyone experiences in their lifetime. I think this poem is describing what it is like to be feeling a dark emotion and not being able to get rid of it. This poem describes wanting to break away from the feeling and be free. Some critics of this poem believe it is about a woman being treated cruelly by a man. They claim Earth represents a woman and it describes how she has been taken over by the dark emotions of the man. Blake uses imagery to describe these emotions in a way that you can visualize them. The author uses the longing of spring as a metaphor for waiting for the grief to pass. There is rhyming in this poem, however the structure is not very clear. It appears to be A, B, A, B, but there is a 5th line in each stanza. This is because Blake includes 2 very short lines in the middle of each stanza, and they rhyme. I think he does this in order to build suspense and make the poem more dramatic. Personification also appears in the first stanza when Earth is described. Blake also uses darkness as a metaphor for evil and light as a metaphor for good. William Blake lived during the Romantic era. He is seen as one of the most influential Romantic poets of this time. William Blake was very creative and he is remembered for his imagination to this day. Not only is he remembered for his poetry, but for his art as well. He provided a lot of illustrations for much of his poetry and other works. He also has inspired several musicians over the years. William Blake's poetry is personal and it explores deep concepts. Songs of Innocence and Songs of Experience are popular because they are about life. William Blake was able to take basic concepts about life and explore them in a very philosophical way. He uses language and literary techniques to make these life experiences beautiful and creative. His poetry is still read and enjoyed today because people of all backgrounds are able to connect to it.